Hi, it's Dwyer, DwyerSportsBetting.com. This video is intended for sophisticated gamblers who understand the risks inherent in sports betting. Proceed with caution, and at your own risk, you could lose it all. These are my 3 plays for Week 11 of the NFL season 2013. Right, the first play, I like the under 51.5 points in the Kansas City at Denver game. Understand that the Denver Broncos for the season by themselves average 41.2 points per game, but they've been under that amount in 3 of the last 4 games. In fact, in those games, they haven't cracked 35 points. Right? Understand, too, that the Broncos have significant injuries that haven't yet shown up in games because they haven't been playing elite opponents. Right? One of those injuries is to offensive left tackle Ryan Clady, a multiple Pro Bowler. Right? Understand, too, that on the defensive side of the ball, they have issues. Right? Champ Bailey actually was out last week against San Diego. They also lost linebacker Nate Irving, who has started 3 games this year for them. So you're looking at a Bronco team that isn't quite as dominant offensively as their season-long numbers would suggest, who aren't as healthy as you'd like. Now understand, too, that last week, the 28 points that they scored was their lowest point total for the entire year. In other words, this team offensively is trending toward the mean. Understand, too, that 2 times in their last 3 games, the Denver Broncos have rushed as a team for less than 90 yards. Right? And so that's a big problem, in my opinion, for the Broncos. Now let's talk about Kansas City. Did you know that Kansas City has not allowed a 300 net yard passer all season? And keep in mind, this is a team that has played teams like the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. Right? Let me also point out, too, that did you know that the Kansas City Chiefs have rushed for more than 100 yards in every game this season except for the last one, in which they rushed for 95 yards. Now, the most points allowed by Kansas City, and keep in mind, we're recommending an under here. The most points allowed by Kansas City this year has been 17. Right? Think about it. 17 points allowed. Also consider the fact that Kansas City is rested and has been preparing for this game for some time because they're coming off a bye. I think that in this divisional matchup between 2 teams with an active interest in winning the AFC West, I'm expecting KC to challenge Denver. KC has had games where they've given up a lot of rushing yards. The Eagle game, they gave up 264 yards rushing. I'm expecting Kansas City to dare Denver to run the football. I'm expecting KC, who plays a 3-4 defensive scheme, to flood the secondary, to close the passing lanes, to cover Demaryius Thomas, who just scored 3 touchdowns last week in a game in which Denver only scored 4 touchdowns. Right? Understand, if Denver starts running the football, that's going to take time off the clock. And understand, too, that even though the Eagles against KC rushed for 264 yards, they only scored 16 points. I like the under 51.5 in KC at Denver. The next play I like are the New Orleans Saints at home laying 2 points against the San Francisco 49ers. Folks, I consider New Orleans to be a better team than the San Francisco 49ers. Right? Let's look closely at San Francisco. San Francisco only had 151 total yards against Carolina last week. Understand, this was their third straight game with less than 200 passing yards. Understand, they've only passed for more than 200 yards once in the last 8 games. Colin Kaepernick simply seems to me, at this point in his career, to be a more athletic version of Trent Dilfer. Understand, too, that they have allowed some passing yards to some passers. They allowed 322 net passing yards to Aaron Rodgers. They allowed 294 to Carson Palmer. They allowed 298 to Jake Locker. Why is this important? Because, of course, they're now about to play Drew Brees in New Orleans. Right? Drew Brees is an elite passer who, of course, has passed for 5,000 yards in a season multiple times. Now let's talk about the Saints. The Saints need this game. I understand they're coming off of an emotional, nationally televised game against the Dallas Cowboys. But they still need this game because they're only one game ahead of the Carolina Panthers. Now understand the Saints offensively are clicking on all cylinders. They just got 40 first downs against a team currently on top of the NFC East, right? By the way, the defense only allowed Dallas 9 first downs. That's a 31 first down gap. Understand, too, that the Saints, and I know they didn't look that great against the Jets, but understand the Saints are coming off of back-to-back games of at least 400 offensive yards. They're also unbeaten at home, right? So I like the Saints. You're giving up less than a field goal here. Today is November 11th. The line is currently the Saints -2 over San Francisco. I think people are putting a little bit too much faith in the 49ers. I think this line is low. You're giving up less than a field goal at home. I like the Saints laying 2 points over San Francisco. Finally, the third and last game is Baltimore at Chicago. I like the under 47 points. Let's look at Baltimore's defense. It's elite. The last 4 games, Baltimore has given up 19, 19, 24, and 17 points. Right? Again, that's 19, 19, 24, and 17 points. Understand, in Baltimore games, teams have not combined to score 47 points in any of Baltimore's last 4 games. In other words, the under 47 would have held in Baltimore's last 4 games. Also, Baltimore has offensive structural problems that a team like Chicago can actually prepare for. Offensively, Baltimore cannot run the ball. They haven't rushed for 90 yards in any of the last 4 games. Right? Now let's talk about Chicago. Understand that Chicago has only given up more than 21 points in 1 of their last 4 games. Right? Understand, too, that while the defense has given up big rushing yards to opponents, and understand in this game, Baltimore can't run the football. Understand that Chicago's defense has not allowed a 300-yard net passer since week 3 of the season. Okay, they gave up a lot of yards in week 3 passing. Since then, no one has netted 300 passing yards against this Chicago D. Understand, too, since Baltimore can't run the football, Flacco would have to put the ball up in the air. Right? Chicago's defense is actually a good bend but don't break defense. Also, Chicago has uncertainty at quarterback. It's clear that Cutler isn't 100%. Right? So there's a possibility that they would have to go with backup Josh McCown. Right? That might impact how aggressive they are in terms of trying to put up points. So I like the under 47. I think both Baltimore and Chicago have above average defenses. I understand that opinion with regard to Chicago's defense is a bit controversial because of the numbers. But just look at the point totals they've given up. You'll see that while they do give up yards, they don't give up that many points, right? This last week, they played a pretty good offense in the Detroit Lions. Take a look at that box score, right? Take a look at the final score of that game. So I like the under 47 in the Baltimore-Chicago game. To sum up, I like the under 51.5 in the KC at Denver game. I like New Orleans laying 2 points over the San Francisco 49ers. And I like the under 47 in the Baltimore versus Chicago game. Good luck. Keep us in mind. I hope you cash all of your tickets. Thanks for stopping by.